Make as many demos as you can. Don't overwhelm yourself, don't get a burnout, but just keep creating one at a time. You will get better with every song that you write. You will get better with every line that you write down. Hello. Welcome back to a new video. I'm so happy to welcome all of you back here in my castle, and I cannot wait to talk to you today. I really do hope you are all having an amazing October so far. It does happen to be one of my favorite months of the year, if not my favorite. Cheers. Today I want to talk to you about songwriting. I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to start songwriting. These tips can be really nice for beginners, but also for people who have experience and just need some extra motivation and some extra knowledge to get started again, because I know how hard it is to start sometimes. My name is Maria Anouk. I'm an artist, I'm a dancer, I'm a model, I'm an actor, I'm a lot of things. But today I will be your songwriting coach. Tip number 1, don't be afraid to make something that sucks. Every time we start something new, and sometimes when we start something for the 100th time, it's gonna suck. And we need to allow our work to suck. Otherwise, we're never gonna take that first step. I talk from experience because I have to deal with this all the time. I have a very hard time getting started because I'm afraid I'm gonna make something that I do not like. Well, guess what? You're gonna make something that you do not like, and that's fine. Even things that you do not like have the right to be created and have the right to exist in this world. So please, don't be afraid of making something that's just really bad. That's the way to grow. That's the only way to grow. Tip number 2, make a playlist of songs that feel like what you would like to make. The song that you want to make doesn't exist yet. That's why you want to make it. So you're not gonna find an exact replica of what you want to make. So instead of focusing on exactly the sounds, the kind of instruments used, the tempo of the songs, like just try to feel. Go to your Spotify, listen to some songs, and whenever you feel a song pop up that you're like, I feel that I want to make something that feels the way this song feels. And then put that in your songwriting playlist. And this way you will have some inspiration to come back to if you don't know where to start. Tip number 3, if you can, create the music yourself. I highly suggest that you try to create the music yourself. But if this is something that you have zero experience in, then it might be easier to grab a beat off of YouTube. There are a lot of nice beats on YouTube. But the reason that I encourage people to create their own beats is because it becomes more your song if you are also in some way in control of the instrumental. So if you play piano or guitar, you don't even have to be very good at it. If you can play it well enough to guide yourself while you sing, then you should use that instrument to write your song. You can always make some kind of house beat or have a producer make a house beat for it later on. So if you just write it with a guitar or a piano and use your imagination for now, that's the best way to go. If you are experienced in softwares like Logic or GarageBand, I highly suggest that you make a beat in there. You can even use a lot of samples, which makes it much easier to make a beat. Anyone can do it, but you need to know, which buttons do what. And maybe you also have a producer or a musician in your network, maybe a friend of a friend that you can work with. If you can influence the instrumental and the beat and the music that you're using to write your song to, it's gonna be more your thing, because this beat of YouTube might not have a bridge. And maybe you wanted to write a bridge, stuff like that. So it's always better to make your own music. It's more fun also. You learn more from it, definitely. If all of that is not possible, you can also just grab a beat online, maybe buy one or just use one that's on YouTube. There are a lot of free beats that you can use. Just keep in mind that you do not release it under a beat that's not yours. There's one good thing about grabbing a beat from YouTube, a beat that already exists. Creativity thrives if it has limitations and boundaries. If anything is possible, you might get overwhelmed. Your creativity doesn't really know what to do. Like, the more restrictions you have, the more creative you need to be. So using a beat, using an instrumental that's already made, gives you structure for the song that you want to write. And structure is very good for creativity. So that's definitely an advantage when you grab a beat that already exists. My 4th tip is to try different methods. There are different ways that you can write songs. Something else works for everyone and everything is okay. There's not one thing that's better than the other. I'm also speaking from personal experiences. This is the way I like to do it, but there are different methods. So I suggest when you start out songwriting, and also when you've already been writing for a while, it's always good to try different methods and see how a song turns out when you try something else. The first method, and the method that I have used the most in the past, is the method of melody. melody comes first. I use this method by freestyling to a beat, getting into my emotions and just speaking gibberish words. It's not a real language I'm speaking. It sounds English, but it's gibberish. A lot of artists, a lot of songwriters do this because this gets you straight into what you feel. And you don't put words to it yet, you don't understand it yet, you're just stepping right into what you feel when you hear the music. You allow the story to come to you, and in a later state when the freestyle is kind of set and okay, this is the melodies that I'm gonna use, this feels right, that's when you look at the lyrics. That's when you're gonna make sense of the gibberish. So you're gonna change the gibberish into actual lyrics. This method works very well because it's easy to get into that zone of your creativity and of your feelings, and you can easily turn off your mind and just go with it. And that's something I and a lot of different creatives really like to do. Now, there are also a few obstacles that can come with this method. For me personally, I'm sure people can relate, but it doesn't have to be like this for you. But for me, sometimes it's hard to pinpoint the story that I want to tell and put it into words because it's really created out of what I felt in that moment, and there's no clear story. So I have to make up the story after making the song, basically. And sometimes this is difficult. I can really sit for hours or even days on just one word that doesn't make sense yet. I need a word that makes sense. Where do I find it? When you are freestyling in gibberish, your focus is on the sounds that make sense. Maybe this is an ah or an o or an e, and then you create sounds that make sense. But then after that, you need to find words that make sense within the story and within the sounds that you wanted to have. Because sometimes in my gibberish, I said something like wardy woo, whatever. But then when I'm writing the story, the word that would make sense with the story would be something like house on a hill. But I wanted a woo sound, and now it's a he sound. And then it's just not adding up for my feels, you know? So that's something that you can bump into when you use this method. And the second thing you can bump into, there are a lot of things that get in the way of the storytelling. So in my experience, I've also seen this with other artists, the storytelling, like the intellectual part of the song becomes a little superficial because you don't have full freedom in the storytelling. You need to stick to the sounds and to the melodies that you've created because it felt right. But now it needs to be a story. So the story really comes secondary. In a song where it's written very well, you can't hear that. But in a song that had like some issues, I can hear in my own songs, but also with other people, I can hear that the story was not a priority. It was secondary. And it's okay, that's totally fine. But that is something that you bump into when you use the method of melody first, yeah? So the second method is a method that I've been using recently and actually works very well for me, the method of storytelling. So you start with a story. What you do when you start with a story is I just sit down behind my laptop and I start to write. It's free writing, or I journal about it, I write. I write from my feelings, I write kind of like it's a poem, but not exactly. I just write. So the pros about this method is that the story is coming first. The story is a priority, so the story will be crystal clear. And there's something very powerful about songs that have a crystal clear story. You will also probably use more advanced and intellectual words in your story, which also makes it much more interesting to listen to. Another pro is that when you do start working on a melody, you already have a lot of restrictions because you already have the lyrics. And like I said in the beginning, restrictions are very good for your creativity. You need to be more creative because you have these limitations. When you need to be more creative, you are very likely to go to places that you've never went before, to create melodies that you've never created before, to do something completely new. And that is so powerful when you are creating. And also the song will become less predictable because you are going in different directions with the melody, which is so powerful. Now, of course, there are also a few cons about this method. And the first one is that it's harder to get into that zone of creating, at least for me. I do consider myself a writer, but first and foremost, I'm a singer and I'm a songwriter. Just sitting down and writing a story, it's harder to get into the zone. Sometimes it can also be very hard to decide what you want to write about. Some songs you want to write about what you feel and what's coming and the emotions that you experience. You want to explain your emotions. And sometimes you just want to tell a story in chronological order. And you need to sit down with that. You need to know what you're going to write about. And when you are just freestyling to a song, you can just switch off your brain and go. Doesn't mean that it's gonna be a good freestyle, but that is the way to freestyle. So yeah, that's a con. Another thing you might bump up against is that you might have to switch the words when you start working on a melody. So you have your lyrics, you have your story, and then you're working on a melody. When you've just written one long ass story, it can also be difficult to figure out which part is gonna be the verse, which part is gonna be the chorus, which part is gonna be the bridge. Is there gonna be a bridge? Are the verses long enough? Do they need to be shorter or longer? So you're gonna have to flip around some words and some pieces and some sentences, but I really like to use free writing and just go as I go. I might use only half of the things that I wrote in the song, but at least the story is crystal clear and the words are intellectual and it just sounds very interesting and very deep most of the time. The songs that I've written with the second method, with the storytelling method, are the songs that are most vulnerable and touches people the most. And that's just because they have a good story. I'm going to use one song as an example of mine. And in this song, I've actually written the verses by the storytelling method. So I started with just writing the story and then I put it into verses. And the chorus I made later, and I made it by freestyling. So by the melody method, made it by freestyling and created the words later on. So these are the storytelling method verses.
For the next 4 days, you're my colleague. Conversations about passion. Are you flirting with me? Yes, you are. I can tell. Am I wrong? Is this real? There must be something I can do to find out how you.
And then this is the chorus, which I created the melody for first.
I'm coming back for more. Can never get enough of you.
So, in my opinion, you can hear in this song that the verses are really about the storytelling and the chorus is more about expressing how I feel. And the lyrics itself in the chorus is actually not very deep. It's very straightforward. It's not very unique, in my opinion, the lyrics of the chorus. But that's okay, because the storytelling already takes place in the verses. So you can also combine it with a song, which is fun. My 5th tip is to not worry about the mixing. This is just a demo that you're creating if you're doing this by yourself. If you're working with a producer, you know, your producer can worry about the mixing. But you don't have to worry about that. This is a demo. You might take it to a producer in a later stadium, but for right now, just write the song. Just write the song. Because if you're like me, you might get stuck on wanting to make the vocals sound very cool from the beginning. At least if you have the ability to record it, because if you are just playing acoustic and writing it like that, you won't have this problem. But if you have the ability to record it and you know how to work in GarageBand or Logic, you might get fixated on mixing, even though that is not the point of what we're doing right now. We are writing a song. Don't worry about the mixing. Tip number 6 is to play around with doubling your vocals and with harmonies. Play around with that. If you have the ability to record, if you have a mic, if you have a software and you can record, play around with it, because you learn a lot from harmonies. And all the songs that you listen to on Spotify, you think you're hearing one voice, but you're actually hearing 6 vocals that are just staggered on top of each other. So play around with that. It's very fun. It's very fun. If you're a singer and that's where you're coming from, doubling your voice and creating harmonies is a lot of fun. Now, I do have to tell you this. I suggest that you start creating doubles and harmonies after you've created the skeleton of the song. You know what the song kind of looks like. Because another thing I tend to do is that I write 4 lines, I record them, then I get completely fixated on creating 6,000 harmonies on these 4 lines because it's fun, and then I have 4 lines. And I do not have a song. And I just spent 2 days creating harmonies. Don't do that, don't be me. Create the skeleton of the song first, and then see how you can play around with different kind of melodies and different kind of doubles and maybe ad-libs and all that fun stuff. But the skeleton comes first. Tip number 7 is to send your demos if you've created 1 or 2 or maybe a few and you really like them and you're curious about, oh, what do other people think of these demos? Send them to other people, but only send them to people you know that make music and that are good at making music. Only send them to other artists, songwriters, musicians, producers that you actually know are professional and know about quality. And I know you're gonna want, especially if you're just starting out, you're gonna want to send it to a lot of your friends and to your family members, but please don't. The reason I'm saying this is because, first of all, this is a demo, which means maybe it's not mixed. Maybe it's still half gibberish. It's definitely not mastered. Maybe you did this all by yourself. So the focus is on songwriting, which is hopefully, probably good if you are willing to share this with people. You probably like it, but the focus is on songwriting. You're not a producer. You're not a music engineer. You don't have to be, but listen to me. Your friends and your family who do not make music and who are not in the music industry, they don't understand that. They don't understand the difference between your demo and what they hear on the radio or on Spotify. The problem with this is that people very often give unsolicited advice, unasked for advice. And your family and your friends, they want the best for you. So they're gonna give you advice out of a place of wanting the best for you. But they're gonna give you advice that doesn't make any sense. Because it's going to be advice that is obviously related to the mixing, because they don't understand the stage that you're in with your song. So please ignore the urge of sending it to them. They will hear it when it's finished. They will hear it after you've worked with professionals, after you've worked with producers, after it's mixed, mastered, everything. So let it go, let it go. Now, of course, if you have friends who are not in the industry but who understand this, or who you can explain this to, let them hear it if you want to, of course. Don't send it to your entire family group's chat and expect people to only give you positive feedback, because that's not going to happen, because this song is not finished yet, and you know that, but they don't. Because I've been in this position when I started recording my songs and I just had demos. I shared the ones that I was most proud of. And then I got a lot of feedback from people who do not understand music, and I took it to heart, and I was like, oh my God, but how do I get it? How do I do it? I don't, because that's not my profession. Someone else is going to do that for me. I'm talking about like mixing, mastering, producing. Don't worry about that. Don't send it to everyone. Okay. Tip number 8 is to make as many demos as you can. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't get a burnout, but just keep creating one at a time. No rush, no worry. You will get better with every song that you write. You will get better with every line that you write down. Take your time, just create, just create. And tip number 9 is that if you're serious about changing your demo to an actual song, then find a producer to work with. Find someone that's also very enthusiastic about your song, that wants to work with you, and just create it with them. Maybe you need some money for that, get some money for that, you know, to pay the producer. But if you're serious about it, share it with the right person and then create it. Finish the song. And then tip number 10 is one that I need to hear. From my experience and in my opinion, a song is only finished when you actually release it. And this is because art is never finished. You can keep working on it forever if you want, but you don't want that. You want to let go and move on. Circle of life. Let go, move on. If you're serious about this song, you work with the producer and everything, release it. See that as the final step of songwriting, as the final step of creating music. Release it. It doesn't matter how many people will hear it, what the audience will think of it. It's about your process of creating something and then letting it go into the world so that you can move on with the next thing. You have to set it free. Like it's a child that just turned 18 and needs to get the fuck out of the house. It has been your baby. It is now grown and ready to walk the world on its own. All right, thank you so much for watching. I want to say the song that I gave an example of earlier is coming out. I'm gonna release it on November 3rd. It's coming out on all platforms. The pre-save link will be in the description, so please pre-save it for me. I hope this video helps you to start writing or to continue writing. I'm proud of you. My name is Maria Anouk. I will be here for you every Sunday, giving you some extra motivation and inspiration to start off the week ahead. And I hope to see you back here. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Put a thumbs up if this video gave you any kind of information that you didn't know yet. And I will see you soon.